In May 2025, the Combined Military Services Museum in Maldon, Essex, unveiled its new Stanton air raid shelter. These air raid shelters are now very rare and also very difficult to move. So how did this come to pass? Where did it come from? And how did it get to the museum? This short film will explain the history, removal and reconstruction of this increasingly rare wartime artefact. The Stanton Air Raid Shelter was named after the Stanton Ironworks, based in Ilkeston, Derbyshire. The ironworks thrived during the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s and also gained military importance by supplying not just the British Army, but also the French and Germans during the Franco-Prussian War. During World War I, output was maximised, with over 12,500 employees working around the clock. At the beginning of World War II, the strengthened iron was used to reinforce concrete, and this led to the War Office giving Stanton Ironworks a contract for air raid shelter manufacture. The air raid shelters were designed in various sizes using sectional reinforced concrete, which could be easily transported and quickly assembled. The versatile nature of using sectional pieces led to the shelters being installed all across the UK, mainly at military sites for personnel and industrial sites as protection for the workers. In this example from RAF Huntston in Hertfordshire, you can clearly see the interior and how simply it all bolts together, forging a strong, bomb-proof shell. Often these shelters were half dug into earthworks, providing increased protection and also camouflage. But our one is much smaller than these examples. It was constructed using 10 reinforced concrete panels, 5 on either side, of the smallest variant, and is roughly the size of a standard garden shed, which incidentally is what it has been used for in more recent years. So how did this one begin its life, and why was it used by civilians? This Stanton shelter was built in the rear garden of a substantial Victorian house just yards away from Trent Bridge cricket ground in Nottingham. In 1940, at the height of the Battle of Britain and the Blitz, the house was owned by the Mather family. Mr. Albert Mather was a well-connected local businessman in the lace and underwear business. He was a Freemason and former master of a lodge, a member of both Nottingham Forest and Notts County football clubs, and also head of Nottinghamshire County Cricket Club, where he is best known for controversially introducing evening cricket matches. It is our belief that he managed to secure one of these military-use air raid shelters for his family, rather than the somewhat more flimsy Anderson shelters, through his many connections in the local business and civic world. It is certainly unusual to find a Stanton shelter in a civilian setting. The only problem for us was that he'd built it in the bottom corner of the garden, behind a blast wall. To get this thing out was going to prove more difficult than it first looked. In January 2024, it was donated to the museum by the new owners of the house, who had been told by the landscapers that they were going to demolish it. A quick decision had to be made, and it was decided to press ahead and re-site the shelter and save it for future generations. So what we needed were volunteers. Now we can get started. The work was extremely complicated due to the age and condition. It was impossible to know at this stage whether the project was viable or not. Maybe it was all going to fall to pieces once we took the bolts out. Oh yes, taking the bolts out was not so easy either. The metal had either expanded, rusted or both. Each bolt had to be cut and drilled out and the sections eased apart. Only one person could work in the shelter whilst angle grinding was taking place. The sections are roughly 500 kilos each, and in such a confined area with so little room for manoeuvre, the first ones were difficult. However, as more were extracted, the easier it became. Eventually, the Stanton shelter was dismantled and ready for removal. Our truck would only take half the sections at once due to weight restrictions, so 2 journeys had to be made. By August, all the sections had arrived on site at the museum and were stored in preparation for when it would be reconstructed. Reconstruction began over the weekend of 8th and 9th of February 2025. All sections were inspected and it was decided to leave 2 of the sections due to safety reasons, but all the rest were fine, which was quite amazing given its age. We decided to leave the original paint on the inside and the weathered patina on the outside, along with the moss. New, good quality stainless steel bolts were used to reconstruct the shelter. It was not an easy task. The weather didn't help either. It was freezing cold, but thankfully not raining too much. There were headaches. But by the end of the weekend, the Stanton shelter was up. Now came the job of sealing, reconstructing the door frame and adding the door, which when opened would also act as an information panel. Our resident volunteer Alex did a wonderful job of adding the detail, even down to aging the look of our brand new steel bolts. It's this attention to detail that makes the exhibit what it is today. Sandbags, screening, 500-pound bombs and other exterior items finish off the display, which now forms an important part of our home front collection. For the interior, we added original 1930s artefacts, including furniture, patchwork quilts, enamel mugs, a 1938 Philips 753A wireless, and framed posters and photographs. An air raid precaution warden's helmet hangs on the wall, and from the ceiling a working storm lamp gently flickers, giving a sense of how this shelter may have looked back in the dark days of World War II, when enemy bombers were roaring overhead. On the 80th anniversary of VE Day, 8th of May 2025, the Mayor of Maldon, Councillor Andrew Lay, officially opened our Stanton shelter and unveiled the plaque, which is now permanently and proudly fixed to the door alongside the information panel. The air raid shelter now plays a large part during our open days, when the courtyard of the museum becomes a hive of historical activity. For children, and indeed the school groups that visit the museum, the Stanton shelter provides a direct educational source of social history. To be able to sit inside and imagine what it must have felt like, listening to the drone of the aircraft overhead, hearing distant explosions and feeling the earth shake as bombs rain down ever closer. The calming influence of parents and the frightened expressions of brothers and sisters. The eventual relief as the eerie drone of the aircraft faded further and further away. An experience that is difficult to realise without being inside. Make no mistake, the air raid shelter is an important part of British history, and we at the Combined Military Services Museum are extremely proud to have one.